We're going to be looking at 12 running backs that you can pick up off waivers for Week 16 and ongoing for fantasy football. We're in the playoffs, and right now the waiver wire, especially for the running back position, is looking rather janky. There might be a guy here and there that you can pick up. Really depends on who's been dropped over these last few weeks. Overall, when you look at the landscape of waiver wires, it's not looking too good. So I hope you got the running back position taken care of this late in the season so we can really win that championship, because the waiver wire isn't that great. But we're going to go over 12 options today. Some of them might even be rostered in your league, some of them not. But on the macro, we're going to cover all these guys today to cover everybody. But what you need to do right now is click that subscribe button. Tap it with the finger on your phone. Click it with the mouse on the computer, because we're covering the waiver wire extensively this week and every week. We're also going to help you set your lineups. And then in the offseason, I'm going to be a key resource for you, because we're going to go over these players nonstop with advanced metrics and player values. And it's going to help you with your drafts. It's going to help you win your league. And that's when this all starts. Click this button. Stop missing out. Let's get this started. So Ty Chandler went off with 24.7 PPR fantasy points, and he's an explosive running back who's getting touches. And that's really all you need to know. We got Detroit coming up. He's very explosive. He's got that Keaton Mitchell effect to him, but he's getting a lot of workload. Alexander Madison, we're watching him, see what happens. I checked the roster rate. He's only rostered in 46% of leagues on ESPN. People did not pick him up because they were scared. They were scared because he wasn't a top draft pick, because he wasn't getting a lot of buzz, because he's been off and on when he was getting opportunities. The thing is, he's a YOLO running back, and if he sees green in front of him, if he gets enough opportunities, there's a chance he houses a run. There was a run earlier this season that got called back. It was a touchdown run that didn't count for fantasy, but if it would have hit, if it would have stuck, I think his stock would have went nuclear after that, because it would have really impacted his fantasy scoring output. But the fact is, you give him green in front of him, you allow him to get that opportunity, he could score big for you. He's that type of player. It's all or nothing when it comes to him and his fantasy production. Just look at the scoring here from Week 10. And this is with him sharing the workload with a lot of this. But Week 10 against the Saints, 10 fantasy points. Week 11 against the Broncos, 15. Week 12 against the Bears, 2. Then we get by in Week 13, Week 14, Raiders, 7.2. Last week, 24. He's an all-or-nothing type of running back. That's just the nature of his skill set. Also, the nature of the offense right now at the quarterback position. A lot of iffiness here, but you got to follow the touches, and you got to follow the explosiveness of Ty Chandler and see what happens here. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's still on waivers in a lot of leagues, mainly because Week 14 didn't look great. And we can't trust these Chiefs running backs. We just can't go all in on them. But we do want some exposure to him in our leagues. In his last 2 games, he's averaged 15 touches per game with a 66.7% opportunity share, 4 targets a game with a 10.8% target share, which is okay for a running back. Pretty solid on the Chiefs, though. 34 routes per game. So he's using the passing game. He's getting carries 11 to 13 per game. So he's getting enough work to at least score enough fantasy points to get you by. I guess that's not true because he scored 8 the week prior. But that touch load is enough for you to hang your hat on and pray to the gods with. That is what I'm saying. That's enough touches to hang your hat on and pray to the gods with. He scored 20 fantasy points last week, 8 the week prior. That's probably what we're going to look at with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's probably going to be up and down. Really depends on the situation. Really depends on the type of touches he gets. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire does have some opportunity here where he can cash. Now we're rolling to Jarett McKinnon. In his last 2 games, he's seen 14 touches per game, a 29.2% opportunity share, 3 targets a game, but ran 32 routes per game as well. So he's being used in the passing game. He's running a fair amount of routes here, but he's scoring in the fantasy department here. 12 fantasy points against Buffalo, 18 against the New England Patriots here. He's getting your opportunities. He's allowing you to get some production, and he's explosive. If you give him green in front of him, he's going to get you some fantasy production. He's going to make that defense pay, and that's how he works. He's also used quite a bit in the passing game, considering he's running a much less snaps than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's almost pushing the pace with him on routes ran, just 2 less per game than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's used a lot in the passing game. That's going to elevate his floor a little bit. But with that 30% opportunity share, that's going to cause him to be a little bit volatile. You're not trusting these Chiefs running backs. They're really not going to be somebody you're going to rely on because we're going to see volatility. But we do have some matchups here that could allow both these guys to be productive going forward. Zamir White, and this all hinges on Josh Jacobs because he's very productive. Josh Jacobs, if he comes back, he's soaking all the workload. He's nuking Zamir White. But if Josh Jacobs is out, he might see another 20-touch game, might see another game where he's pushing a 70% opportunity share because this team identifies by using the running back a shit ton because we've seen it with Josh Jacobs. They're not going to go away from it. They may decrease from it a little bit as they did because Josh Jacobs pushes like an 80% opportunity share. But still, Zamir White is going to get the workload between the tackles, the short yardage work, the goal line work. He's going to get those opportunities. And if he scores, he crosses the goal line, then you're going to have a big week because he's not going to be used much in the passing game. Even though he saw 4 targets, it just doesn't project out to that due to what we saw at Georgia. However, he's big, fast, explosive, 90th percentile size adjusted speed score. Can really make you pay if you give him a running lane that's open. That being said, Zamir White, he's an upside play every week if Josh Jacobs is out. Trey Surman got some touches because Zach Moss got injured, had a 45.9% opportunity share, 17 touches. We're watching Zach Moss. Week 16, we got Atlanta. Week 17, we got the Raiders. You may not be putting him in your lineup, but you may be a little bit interested considering he's getting touches here, and you know the Colts can get in these weird game scripts. That being said, you don't trust him, and you shouldn't. Nobody's going to trust Trey Surman, but there is touches to look at here. If Moss is out, then you may want to think about him if you need touches at the running back position. Chase Brown over the last 3 weeks, a 30.6% opportunity share, 10 touches per game, 11.2 PPR points per game, but that's buoyed by week 14. 4.3 routes per game, 14 snaps per game with a 20.7% snap share. That being said, we're not getting enough workload for him to be consistent, but we're getting enough explosiveness for us to be intrigued and for us to roster him just in case something happens to Joe Mixon. Or if you have Joe Mixon, you got this trendy handcuff because you know he can go nuclear on any given play. We've seen that already. He's explosive on the field. He's dynamite with the ball in his hands. Again, another running back here where if you give him green in front of him, he could house it. You want a few of those running backs on your roster, at least one on the back end, just to see what happens. Chase Brown's a trendy pickup. He's been these last few weeks. I would not count on him in lineups, but I would also want him on my roster just in case for the future, even though the future is just 2 more weeks. Tyler Algier, last 3 games, 10.7 touches per game, 32% opportunity share, and we're not really picking him up unless you're really, really hurting. Arthur Smith might have him on his fantasy team, but he is getting some touches. Not enough for us to care, but enough touches if you're hurting that bad, and he's there to pick him up. If I have Bijan, I might pick him up. I might, because I know he's getting workload if something happens to Bijan. The thing about Bijan, though, he's not getting enough touches to get hurt anymore, so that's getting us kind of scary. But Tyler Algier, we're not really picking him up, especially if we're good at running back. Say if I'm 3 or 4 running backs deep, forget about it. However, if I'm 1 or 2 running backs deep, waiver wire is cleaned. He's the top name there. You got to do what you got to do. Not everything here is going to be recommendation, but sometimes you got to talk about the player. Like Isaiah Spiller. He's not a recommendation, but he's getting touches, and you got to look at that. The Chargers offense, we don't know what to do with it. Do you know what to do with it? Are you excited about the Chargers offense right now? You think they're going to push the pace really well with Herbert out? Do you think it's going to look like that? And there's competition with these running backs. Isaiah Spiller's starting to get some opportunities. After all, they got to see what they have in them. They got to see what they can do with them for next year. 6'1", 215 pounds, mid-round pick. Had a lot of upside coming out of Texas A&M. Can catch the ball in the backfield. Thick physical runner. And he moves laterally well for a skill set. However, yards per carry, 3.17, 3.13. That's turning into a trend. However, it's not the greatest thing running behind the Chargers offensive line. We've seen that through the PFF numbers throughout the season. But you see an increase in snaps, opportunity share, and touches, which is something you may want if you're in a bind. But I hope you're not in a bind right now that's that bad or that catastrophic, because the odds of you winning in your league is immensely low. But good luck if you're using Isaiah Spiller. You're not going to trust it. But if you're getting 16 carries in a game, there's a chance you might cross the goal line. And he's got the size that they're going to use him at the goal line if he's getting that many touches. If they're interested in seeing him work, there's some opportunity to that. Are you going to trust it? I don't think so. I don't think so. Roshan Johnson's back, and we're in, we're out, we're in, we're out, and the Bears are in, they're out, they're in, they're out. He saw a 40.7% opportunity share in Week 15, and the other running backs, Khalil Herbert, D'Onta Foreman, between them, they saw almost a 50% opportunity share. They're splitting up the work between these running backs. Things seem like they're going to be advantageous. He did see 6 targets in this matchup against the Browns. Again, the Browns defense create weird game scripts. The game script was kind of weird. However, we have Arizona on the docket this week. I do not know what that means, but I do know that running backs score fantasy points against Arizona. Pick your poison with this Bears offense. If you like what you saw last week with the touches with Roshan Johnson, go with him. If you're a D'Onta Foreman guy, go with him. Pick your poison here, and you may want to roster your poison so nobody else can accidentally inject that poison like it's steroids and go ham against you later on down the road or this week or whatever. Maybe you want to do that, especially if you got a spot, just in case. That's what I'm looking at. I don't want any of these running backs to go nuclear against the Cardinals because they do allow a lot of fantasy points to running backs, one of the tops in the leagues. And when the running backs do hit against them, they hit for real. They hit for real. And you may not want to mess with that going against you in your lineup this week because it could be a game changer if Roshan hits, if D'Onta Foreman hits. I'm scared of that because the Bears are a weird team. They get in weird game scripts. They do weird shit. I don't want that weird shit to happen to you. Taj Spears, and we're talking about him again. I think we talked about him every week. That's a good sign that he's flashing all season long. Splitting the snaps with Derrick Henry. Seeing about a 50% snap share on the season. He's been explosive. He's had some plus games this year in PPR scoring-wise, especially week 13 and 14. He's a lottery ticket stash handcuff, however you want to identify him as. But Derrick Henry, if he does go down, or if they want to see what they have more in Taj Spears, give him a few more touches or a few more series in this next matchup or 2 or 3, then you may want him, or you may want to play with him if you're hurting, or use him in DFS or whatever. But Taj Spears, we're always going to talk about him every week as he's splitting the load and showing that he can be explosive. Same thing as the last few weeks with Kenneth Gainwell. Just a cuff for DeAndre Swift if you need a cuff, because DeAndre Swift's injury history has been extensive. However, Swift has not been hitting in fantasy production over these last few weeks. You don't be leery on that, but it really depends on the roster size, where you're at running back, what you want to do. But again, Kenneth Gainwell, if you need a handcuff, not for lineups. Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell's out. Pour some liquor on that. The snaps are going to increase. The touches are going to increase. We got Miami in week 17. Some other tough matchups coming up with the Niners in week 16. Pick your poison. He is going to get some touches. He is explosive. They're going to give him some work. He can hit from week to week or off and on, however you want to look at it, with him and Gus Edwards. We've seen that this year. However, I'm not going to trust it. You're not going to trust it, and you're only going to want him on your team if you're in a dire situation. Those are 12 running backs that we're looking at for Week 16 and beyond for the rest of the fantasy football season. Like I said, the waiver wire at the running back position is getting dicey as we get deeper into the playoffs. A lot of these guys should be rostered. There are not many stashes left that could go boom on us. Just not many. Maybe surprise guys. Maybe guys, if they get a couple extra touches and make rumble across the goal line or something. But no guys that were really running to the waiver wire and picking up. Just not many of those guys. Just a lot of jabronis on the waiver wire to look at. But who's that jabroni you're picking up? Let us know in the comments below. I want to hear about it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.